Hey, everybody. I wanted to take some time to interview some of my past students, help you understand what is mindful forgiveness. I've talked about it a little bit, but wanted you to hear it from not only me, but from students who have been in class with me. Colleen is a really good friend of mine. We've done lots of personal development stuff together, and she's just been a gift in my life and a blessing. She just did one of my classes. And so first of all, Colleen, introduce yourself.
Hey, thank you, Joan. So yes, Colleen McKay. I'm one of Joan's buddies from Canada, and we get to connect on so many great things and have connected in the personal development world. And I saw her mindful forgiveness stuff come up a couple of different times on my social media feed, and finally took the deep dive in, and so grateful that I did. It truly a blessing to get to call you friend and to have gotten to share the space with you in the mindful forgiveness class. Just absolutely amazing.
Awesome. So when you first took the class, I know we've talked about a little bit that just seeing the thing, you're like, yeah, I'm just avoiding that completely. But when you were first going into the class, because I know you kind of reached out to people who did it, what were you thinking going in? What was your expectation, or what were your thoughts around it, if you had any?
Yeah, so I would say it landed in my lap at just the right time. And yes, my initial kind of, when I saw it and I went, oh, not for me, I realized was I had some triggers around forgiveness and growing up and what forgiveness meant, and growing up in the church, and you need to forgive and you have to forgive, and that's a good Christian thing to do. And it just, I had some stuff around it. So I think that was my initial kind of resistance to it. But then the topic of forgiveness came up on my coaching call. It came up on a couple life things. It kept resurfacing. So I eventually got to the point of, okay, I need to take a closer look at this forgiveness piece and figure out what on earth is coming up. So that's when you had another round of classes coming up. I saw it come up. I happened to be talking to one of our mutual friends, and she mentioned having taken the course. And I was like, okay, you've taken the course. Tell me, what was it like? What did you get from it? What was your experience? And so not only did she say she took it, she's like, I've gone back and retaken it, and I'm going to take it again because I love going through it, because it's the practice. It's the exercising the muscle. Yeah. And it's the opportunity to practice it in a safe space where when you fall down, there's people around you to help you get back up and see what maybe tripped you up that particular time. So going into the class, I was very much excited to be able to practice in a safe space. Like that was my expectation. Going in, learning what true forgiveness is, not the church view of what I thought forgiveness had to be, and be the bigger person, and turn the other cheek, and forgive and forget, like all of those kind of cliche things about forgiveness that I had found did not serve me. I was really excited to get to learn a different perspective around forgiveness, get to learn a more compassionate and self-compassionate version of forgiveness, and get to do it in a space with someone that I love and trust. And I knew that you create such a safe space, and knowing that how you show up and how you teach and who you be, you do a really good job of reflecting without telling anyone what to do, but just holding space that we can learn, but also reflecting back to us what you heard. So I knew I would learn a lot faster, because not only was I going to get to practice, I was going to get to see how I showed up in a really cool and exciting way. So those were kind of my headspace going into it. What I was expecting to get out of the class. If that answered the question.
No, it totally did. Thank you. That's awesome. And when I went into the class, I was just like you. I was like, forgiveness, meh, I think I know what I'm doing. I forgive people, right? I don't know. I don't have grudges, or whatever the story I was telling myself in the moment.
Yep.
And for what hooked me is the process. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a process and there's steps. Sign me up.
Yes.
I could do this up here. It's not about down here right now. That was what I lied to myself to get myself into the class. But
thought about it that way, but 100% the organizer in me was like, yes, steps that I can check off and get this done and move it off of my to-do list, and this is going to be fancy and fantastic. Not what it ended up being, but that was an enticing piece of it for sure. And yes, steps, we definitely got steps, but it's not as easy as, like you say, checking it off at a head level. There's very much heart involved in all of it, which was good, because the healing happens at the heart. Had I just done the check boxes at the head level, I would never have gotten past the emotional, because it was an emotional block. So I had to go into my emotions to deal with the block to get to the other side of it. 100%.
Yeah. It's almost a trick to the logic side to go, brain, we're going in for the logic stuff. But when we're in there, she's going to talk to us about our feelings and where it's in our body and all of that good stuff. Right. So
yes, exactly.
All right. So you've been out of class for what, 2 weeks now, week and a half?
Yep.
What, if you look back now, what is your biggest takeaway that right away you're able to implement and you can go, oh yeah.
Oh, like you're limiting me to one.
You can have
I'm
multiple.
gonna ignore the rule of one, and I'm going to tell a few things. But I think one of the big things that I have been loving is, yes, it's a week and a half, 2 weeks out, but the number of times, the conversations that I'm in or people I'm interacting with, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I can apply this stuff I learned in class. Like literally, I was in a conversation with someone last night and I was like, unenforceable rules. Oh my goodness, that's exactly what's happening. And being able to be in that conversation, and kind of twofold of that, feeling like I can use this and apply it to life, not just in forgiveness, but just in life, which is fantastic. But also being able to be in conversation with other people and being able to help them see things a little bit different, and not in a telling them how to live their life, but just oh my gosh, I learned a tool and it's friggin' phenomenal and it's really supporting me. So the unenforceable rules was a big one. And it comes up every time I get frustrated with something. I'm like, oh, what's the unenforceable rule that's at play here? And I'm like, oh, okay. And it just immediately brings my energy down.
Yep.
It allows me to extend compassion to other people a whole heck of a lot better. I was at the grocery store and something happened and I was like, I can feel the energy going up and I'm like, oh, wait, unenforceable rule here. They don't know what I'm expecting. They're just living their life. I get to send love at them and I get to go off and do my thing. And that's fantastic. I would say part two of the takeaway is the perspective taking, and perspective taking from the space of moving forward, not from the space of trying to fix what's in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of my big blocks. Was I would perspective take all the time, but I would perspective take from the space of, I need to take perspective to see how I misinterpreted that so that I can change my feelings about it. And that never worked, because then I always had the push-pull tension of I was always wrong with what I felt in the situation. And so learning perspective taking take the perspective to see what else might have been at play, honoring the feelings that came up, honoring how I was feeling, but then also seeing the other pieces that were in there so that I can get to a different place going forward, not to change how I felt in the moment, because A, that's impossible, it's in the past. But B, really truly honoring how I felt anytime that it came up, because whatever came up for a reason.
Yep.
And whether somebody else would have reacted that way or not, that is how I reacted. So let me take perspective and go, okay, what else was at play and what can I learn from that? So if I don't like how I reacted, how can I shift that so I don't react like that again in the future? So those would be my biggest takeaways: the perspective shift without judgment and the unenforceable rules, and really kind of playing those. And every single day I'm using them and they're coming up in conversations, and it's fun. It's exciting.
Yeah, and how much they go together, right? Because how often now are you seeing unenforceable rules that other people have, and you're like, oh, you have an unenforceable rule that you don't know you have,
yes.
Right? And now it helps you, like, from a different view, go, oh, I'm not taking that on. That's just you.
Yes.
You have an unenforceable rule that you don't know you're living by, right? And I love that you take the next step and are willing to share it and be like, hey, I learned this cool tool, and not from this place of I know more than you here, which is not my experience of you at all. So hear me. So I love, thank you for sharing that, because that's the cool part. Unenforceable rules make me laugh. So it automatically does that job of diffusing it a little bit, because I'm like, what? People shouldn't cross the crosswalk? They don't know that I'm thinking they're crossing the crosswalk. They're just going about their day, living in the crosswalk, just chilling, waiting on their babies that I can't see, whatever it might be, right? But now that I can giggle and go, ooh, I have an unenforceable rule about standing in the crosswalk.
Yes.
And what is it about? Oh, I don't want to hit you. Because if I hit you, I don't want to live with that on my life of having ran over somebody because I wasn't paying attention. And how much of it was about me not seeing you to the last minute. And that's really where my anger came up.
Yes.
Right? It had nothing to do with you.
Yeah. I was walking my dog yesterday. And so the unenforceable rule I have is you always walk your dog on the outside of the trail. So you walk on the right side and the dog walks on the right side of me. So the dog is on the right side of the trail. So if I'm passing anyone, my dog is always farthest away from other people. That is my unenforceable rule. Side note, I did see it on a sign somewhere on this trail. So technically it's a rule somebody else put, but nobody's enforcing it. So, but I'm walking along with my dog, and a larger group is coming the other way, and they have 2 dogs, and neither one of them is on the outside. They're both walking in front of the human with a 6-foot leash, so the dog can go wherever it wants. So in my head, I'm going like, oh crap, like there's no way to avoid these dogs. They're going to get up. And so I immediately get tense and upset and irritated, because I'm like, they're going to upset my dog because they're not following the rule. But then I went, I can either choose to ask them to hold their dogs closer or whatever, or I can choose to just go, they're out having an amazing day enjoying the sunshine for the first time in weeks. and they're having a great time, I'm going to stop my dog. I'm going to pull myself over a little farther on the trail. I'm going to sit her down and I'm going to give her all kinds of love and attention so she doesn't even notice the other dogs walking by. And oh my goodness, great experience for me, for them. They didn't notice.
And for your dog.
Yes.
Because energetically, our dogs feel our stress and now they're on guard. So we just went through this whole thing about you're stressing my dog out, but really who's stressing our dog out?
This girl.
Yeah, because we're stressed out. Yeah. And I feel you on that. And it's such a beautiful way to shift that you're like, oh, I'll just move you and da-da-da. Great. Or you could have a conversation and be like, hey, can you bring your dogs to the right? I'm not sure how friendly my dog wants to be today. Right. Yeah. Whatever the conversation is,
But realizing that I am at choice. I have choices. Just because, like, realizing that my unenforceable rule, A, is unenforceable, and B, nobody else, they might not know about it, and they have choices and all that kind of stuff. So what I get to do is I get to go, okay, what do I need to do to make me feel safe, to make me feel secure, whatever it is that I'm needing in that moment, whatever I am craving. That's why I had the rule in the first place in my head somewhere, and go, how can I give that to myself in a different way that is not going to require other people to stand on their heads to make it happen. And I think that's a fun place that I've been playing in.
Yeah.
So, having more fun, my dog's not getting upset nearly as often, and like you said, it's the funny and it's the laughing at it, and being able to like literally smile at those people as they walked by, instead of like in the past their dog would have likely come a little close and my dog would have likely reacted a little bit and I would have like given them a scowl like, how dare you? And so to be able to literally just look at them with love and kindness and be like, hey, have a great day, like that just was made my day better, and I'm sure made their day better, and it just was so much more fun.
Right. And that's the potential, right? You could have carried that interaction, had you have let it go how you normally did, with you for the rest of the walk.
Yeah. Yep.
Did those people change perspectives? No, they're just still having a fun day. They're not even realizing they bothered you, but yet you're carrying that whole negativity with you for the rest of the walk, 5 minutes, whatever it takes. But this way you had the moment, aware of where you were at, and then you were able to clean it and go about your day, and you have a joyful day too with your dog, who you're not now freaked out with by, is your dog going to react? Now your dog's stressed. Now you're stressed. We're just going back to the car, or whatever you would have made it work. Yeah. Okay. So talking about the mindfulness that we do within the class, one of the things we work on is being more in touch with your body and where emotions are. How do you feel that shown up for you? Was that something you were able to take away with? Where are you at with being more aware with yourself?
I would say the mindfulness was something I had started working on prior to the class. Like I would say in the last kind of year has been something that I've trying to be more aware of my body. How is my body feeling? How's my mind feeling? Where are my emotions at? And then where I start feeling stuff. And part of that is just my experience with you and getting to be friends with you and hearing you talk about stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, like my throat is super tight right now. I wonder what's coming up. What emotion is associated with that? So having kind of been working on that ahead of time, I think laid a really great foundation, and having the intentionality that we got to practice in the class and the check-in and go like, how did it feel this week? And go, oh yeah, no, I totally forgot to think about it this week, and then made it an intention for the next week and started paying a little bit more attention, and really, I think it allowed a little bit more grace and compassion to myself, because being able to kind of go like, I didn't get to a point of going like, oh, I'm so mad and I don't know why, because when I was being mindful and paying attention, I could feel it coming on, feel it in my body, or I could feel it, and then could either choose to shift or to sit with it and see what else is coming up. But just, it gave me more understanding of myself and where I was at. And it also just, it didn't leave me quite so shocked. Like when I'm not in tune with my body, it's like my body, mind, body, whatever has to get really loud to get my attention, which is really shocking. But if I'm more in tune, I can see it as it's creeping up, and I can flow with it. And it's not quite the same shock to the system when I'm like, oh my gosh, there's an emotion and it's hitting me over the head. So that would be definitely a big piece of the mindfulness that came in. But then also just the intentionality of, what does it look like to sit in quiet silence? And what does it look like to check in with my emotions in the morning? And what does it look like to, hey, something's coming up, sit down and write about it for a little bit, like just the intentionality behind it. And then getting to kind of notice at the end of the day, oh my goodness, like I'm feeling better because I didn't let that one thing carry throughout the whole day. when it first came up, I looked at it, I saw it, and I dealt with it. I was mindful about it, and I worked on it, as opposed to just letting whatever felt like happening and coming to me swirl in my mind and my body for the entire course of the day. So it allowed me to kind of notice and let go of things a little bit better. Still working on it, still growing in it.
Yeah.
And it's so much more freeing to be able to like notice when something comes up, deal with it right away, and let it go, as opposed to just let it build and build and build, and then get to the end of the day and wonder why I can't fall asleep.
Yeah. Well, and in that is that choice, like you said, because sometimes you're aware of it coming up, and we still get to choose to be at our crap.
Yeah.
And so believe me, this is not a magic eraser class. Those things still happen. The difference is you're more aware, and sometimes awareness is a double-edged sword. Because now you're aware, so you know what's coming up, and you get to choose what to do with it. So I love that, and how a beautiful perspective you acted out when you were at the dog park, because that's literally it. You were paying attention to your getting your energy even raising, and that you had an unenforceable rule, right? So that was you being present in the moment, not still behind your day, but present in the moment. And so that's awesome. It's been such a blessing talking to you. Thank you for coming on. Our friendship, I love that I have you in my corner. Surround yourself in people like Colleen. Surround yourself in people that are moving the same way you're going, and can teach you and be the teacher and the student the same. Because to me, it's about being in the group with you. And the reason I do it is for that practice you've talked about. Yes. I actually go through the steps with everybody, and I'm part of it, as you know. But that's because I do it because it helps me to continue to process. You know, it helps me to continue to dig and find the next story and find the next thing, because there are things that are going to be bigger, right? Yes, we can have awareness and work on it in the moment. And the difference is you get to choose what you get to work on, versus what I heard you say is when you're not dealing with it, you get to deal with what happens to you. Like what comes and smacks you across the face and says, we're working on this, right? So it no longer is a choice. It's reacting versus responding and getting to make the choice. So what a beautiful way.
And I just want to, if I can quick tag on, because we hadn't talked about that, the fact that you go through the course with us, getting to experience you going through it as an example of what it can look like, and not a perfect example of like, oh my goodness, I'm superior and I have it all figured out. You go through what, like a real example of what you were dealing with, and you walk through the steps, which shows that like, this is not something wrong with us that is coming up that we need to fix. It is something we get. Mindful forgiveness is something we're going to get to practice day in and day out for the rest of our lives. And that in and of itself is nice, because you're not promoting it as a magic pill. Like, once you do this class, you're fixed for life. It's a practice you get to keep doing, and seeing you go through it in a vulnerable space and an authentic space, to really give an example of what could it look like, and not the right answer, but just, this is my experience of it, is such a blessing and such a gift and such an encouragement as the rest of us are going through that space. So just for those listening, the fact that you go through it with us is amazing, and part of the fun of the class, for sure.
Yes, definitely. Yes, fun, not so fun, depending on the day of the thing I'm working on. No, just kidding. I love it because it gives me the space to verbalize it and shine the light on the stuff that tend to be shame, blame, or guilt, and hiding right from other people. So we want that. I want you to think I'm amazing back here. I don't do a good job of pretending to be amazing, so I don't need to anymore. Now I'm just like, okay, here I am. Here's my stuff. So thank you so much, Colleen, for coming on today. And I appreciate you allowing me to share this video, and look forward to multiple things we'll be doing in the future together. I can't wait. Podcasts maybe that she may be doing. We'll be on the lookout with all the amazing, by the way, this girl right here, amazing small business coach. Just letting you know, she built her farmers market from scratch, learned all the business about it. She's great at motivating you to do you, find your why, and why it is you want to do what you do. So small business coach right there.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that.
Love you. Thanks guys for listening, and hopefully we'll see you in my next class.
Yeah.
See you soon.